The satellite, the solstice, and the scorch. They say, till death do us part. Apparently, in the era of digital escape, that clause now includes the caveat, unless you find someone more exciting in a different time zone. That's my hook. That's how my 15-year saga of devotion disintegrated into a global, spectacular combustion. I'm Alex, and I just turned 28. Young, you might think, to be navigating the radioactive fallout of a 6-year marriage. But the truth is, I've known Serena, also 28, since we were both 17. We met during the final, frantic year of high school in the bustling, historic city of Viridia. She was the new girl, having moved from the quieter, coastal town of Etheria when her mother transferred for a high-profile tech role. We were inseparable friends through high school, a connection so deep it survived the distance and differing majors of university. Then, a few years after graduation, destiny, or maybe just a few mutual friends, placed us back in the orbit of Viridia's thriving downtown. A few coffees turned into dinners, dinners into dates, and eventually 6 years ago we said I do. I genuinely believed we had built a fortress, a life based on shared history and effortless intimacy. For the first few years, the fortress held. It felt impenetrable, but slowly, the light inside started to dim. It began with distance, a subtle shift in her emotional gravity. It was like she was a satellite, still tethered, but her core attention had drifted into deep space. She'd overcompensate sometimes, a flash of her old warmth, only to retreat again, the emotional thermometer dropping back to freezing. This pattern, a week of cold distance followed by a brief, bewildering day of normalcy, dragged on for almost 6 weeks. My sympathy quickly curdled into irritation. I despise that passive-aggressive game. What's wrong? Nothing, I'm fine. We even argued over it. How could she think I wouldn't notice the storm behind her eyes? When she finally shut down my last sincere attempt to talk, I knew I had to find my own answers. That I started with Maya, her closest friend. I figured she'd be the easiest entry point. I felt like a spy, asking, "Is Serena okay?" She's been so withdrawn. Maya played innocent, claiming Serena hadn't confided in her. My internal alarm bells screamed lie, but I backed off. I knew the moment I left, Maya would text Serena. When I got home, Serena was quiet, not mentioning my conversation. That was my final sign. If she wouldn't tell me, I would simply read it. The next night, I waited. Serena, bless her capacity for deep sleep, was out like a light by 11:30 p.m. I had the stage. I started with Maya's chat and confirmed my suspicion. Messages were deleted, but the fragments were telling. Maya had cautioned Serena. That's a huge risk, but do what you need to be happy. Risky. Divorce wasn't risky, it was messy but not risky. What fit that profile? Only one thing, that I scrolled. And I found Devin. Devin was a project manager, hired about 2 years ago at Serena's digital marketing firm. I'd met him once. Nice guy, unassuming, zero threat. The kind of person you wouldn't look at twice. I should have looked twice. Their chat history was a sanitized landscape of deleted conversations, but the remaining debris was damning. They were arranging meetings at trendy rooftop bars and obscure gallery openings. The comments were overtly flirtatious, and there were several "thank you for the gift" texts from Devin. It wasn't platonic. It was undeniably romantic. Then I hit the jackpot. A discussion thread about an exclusive, minimalist luxury resort called the Zenith Cloister. Location: Kyoto, Japan. They were debating the merits of the Zen garden view versus the private onsens. Serena had told me she was planning a corporate training seminar in Phoenix, Arizona. My stomach dropped. I searched my email, then hers. A few days after their resort decision, a flight itinerary for Serena appeared in her inbox. Destination: Kyoto. She was going. She wasn't going with me. Refusing to accept the obvious, I did what any logical, wounded man would do. I exported the entire chat history and hired a private investigator. The digital trail was suggestive, but I needed the concrete, unshakable evidence that would stand up in family court and obliterate her facade. I needed proof of physical intimacy. I paid for surveillance during her usual work hours. If they were brazen enough to book a trip to Japan, they were certainly bold during their lunch breaks. My PI, a grizzled ex-cop named Ben, delivered the goods in 3 days. Pictures: Serena and Devin, locked in a passionate kiss in his car outside the office park after their lunch break. Followed by sequential photos of them entering and exiting a house, presumably his, in a 20-minute window after work. The truth was a physical blow. I cried in a restroom stall at work, the first time since I was a child. The tears were for the death of a beautiful past, not for the selfish woman she had become. The crying cleansed me, hardened my resolve. I had a path. My retaliation would be symmetrical and delivered at the peak of her anticipated joy. I booked a ticket to Kyoto. I checked into a separate hotel for a night, then moved into the Zenith Cloister the morning of their arrival. Serena had texted me a vague photo from a conference room that was clearly an amenity lounge. I played the role of the oblivious husband, texting, "Glad you landed safely in Phoenix. Miss you." I donned a pair of dark, expensive sunglasses and a wide-brimmed straw hat. Incognito. I wandered the gardens, the pools, but saw nothing. The waiting was excruciating. I knew where they would surface eventually. Dinner I found them at the resort's main, open-air restaurant. They walked in, holding hands, Serena radiant, laughing at something Devin whispered. I was already seated, my meal half finished. I waited until their server had taken their order. Then I stood, walked over, and pulled a chair up to their table. I waited until Serena's eyes, shielded by the oversized sunglasses I'd bought her, finally focused. I took off my hat and my shades. Serena froze, her face draining of color. Devin's initial confusion morphed into recognition and a whispered, "Oh, hell." My phone was recording in my shirt pocket. "Devin," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "How are the onsens? Are they private enough for a colleague and a married woman?"
Det var onsdag, Alex. I'm sorry, ma'am.
That's all I can say. I ignored him, my gaze locked on Serena. "Serena, is this why you've been so distant? Because you were planning a vacation to Japan with your corporate training colleague?" She covered her face with her hands. "Stop, Alex. Please." I stood up, ensuring every patron in that serene, opulent space could hear me. "Attention, everyone. This woman," I pointed at her, "is my wife. She told me she was on a business trip to Phoenix. She is actually here in Kyoto, vacationing and sleeping with her colleague. This man, Devin, is her affair partner. I loved her for 15 years, and this is how she repays me." Serena finally lifted her head, her eyes burning with humiliated rage. "You ruined this. You always ruin everything." "No, sweetheart," I said, leaning in so only they could hear the final, chilling line. "You ruined our marriage. I'm just ruining your vacation. Enjoy the rest of your trip." I left. I spent 2 more days at the resort, relishing the fact that they never emerged from their room. The fortress of our life was already rubble, but now, her escape route was scorched earth. When I landed back in Viridia, Serena was waiting for me at the house, a rehearsed apology ready on her lips. She launched into the classic spiel. I was selfish, it started as a joke. I lost control. I listened, impassively. I acknowledged her words. And then, an hour later, the doorbell rang. It was the process server. She didn't say a word when she was served the divorce papers. She just stared at me, then at the documents, and began to cry. I convinced her to move out of the house with barely a fight. She was too emotionally pulverized to resist. The divorce eventually concluded. I got the house. Due to the evidence of her infidelity and the $6,000 she had spent on Devin over a year using our joint funds, all detailed in the exported chat and financial statements, the judge granted me a favorable settlement. I pay a minuscule alimony, but the amount she owes me has been deducted from the initial payments, making it effectively zero. My final victory was delivered with a digital hammer. I uploaded the confrontation video, naming both her and Devin, and sent the link to every person we knew. I then contacted her firm, subtly suggesting they might want to audit the corporate credit cards used by 2 employees who were simultaneously engaged in a high-profile affair. Predictably, they were both terminated. Serena called, hysterical, threatening me with Devin's wrath. I calmly informed her that I'm highly experienced with firearms and he wouldn't be macho for long. He never showed that I'm a single man again. The pain is a dull ache now, a scar from unnecessary surgery. I'm 28. The world is open, and the satellite that drifted away is now burning up in its own failed orbit. And that, my friends, is how you turn a sweetheart's sour betrayal into a scorch and rebuild operation.